Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Know Your Black History series. Tonight's event is Know Your Black Texas History Juneteenth in honor of this weekend's holiday. My name is Morgan Carter, and I'm the content manager at the James Beard Foundation, and I'm so happy to be welcoming you all this evening. Since March of 2020, the James Beard Foundation has been hosting industry support webinars and virtual events like this one to help navigate the challenges of COVID-19, provide resources for the hospitality industry, and to better stay connected through difficult times. Before we get going, here's some quick housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. We'll post a link to the recording on openforgood.com after the program wraps. If you have any questions for the panelists, please write them in the Q&A. We'll try to address a few questions as time allows. And if you're having any technical difficulties, just message us and we'll use the Q&A and we'll do what we can to troubleshoot. The JBF team is keeping an eye out and we'll be happy to assist. Tonight's conversation and exciting cooking demo is inspired by Juneteenth, the oldest known celebration honoring the end of slavery in the United States. The Emancipation Proclamation declared more than 3 million enslaved people to be free in 1863. But it took 2 more years before the news reached African Americans in Texas. It was only when Union soldiers came to Galveston on June 19, 1865, that they learned slavery had been abolished. Tonight's esteemed moderator is Tonya Hopkins, also known as the Food Griot, who is a culinary historian, podcast creator, wine and spirits expert, businesswoman, and so much more. Tonya is a co-founder of the James Hemings Society and is also a main advisor for the Museum of Food and Drink's groundbreaking exhibition, African/American Making the Nation's Table. Also joining us tonight are Chef Chris Williams, founder of owners Lucille's Hospitality Group. Lucille's restaurant opened as a tribute to his great-grandmother and culinary pioneer, Lucille B. Smith. The namesake restaurant has since morphed into Lucille's Hospitality Group. Chef Chris's most recent endeavor, his nonprofit Lucille's 1913, functions as a conscious community collective that is combating food insecurity and waste, creating training and employment opportunities in traditionally under-resourced neighborhoods, and empowering communities to discover a self-sustainable livelihood through food. Joy Chevalier founded the Cook's Nook in Austin, a culinary incubator which provides kitchen space, co-working, and business and entrepreneur development for those in the food tech industry. Throughout her career, Joy has also been an active member of many food organizations, such as Slow Food USA, Women in Food, Farming and Food Technology, Women Chefs and Restaurateurs, and is a much lauded leader in the Austin business, food, and tech community. Later this evening, Joy will be showing us how to cook a really delicious Texas-style recipe, so stay tuned. Marcus Davis is a restaurateur, speaker, and political commentator, and the entrepreneur behind the Breakfast Club, a nationally recognized Houston staple. Marcus is best known for his tireless commitment to the community and authentic customer appreciation. As the host of the web-based show, Fish, Grits, and Politics, Marcus dishes a hearty helping of information to feed minds and empower communities. He serves on the boards of United Way of Greater Houston, the Greater Houston Convention and Visitors Bureau, Downtown Houston Management District, and is advisory board member for PepsiCo. So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Tonya, would you like to get started?
Morgan, aren't you forgetting something? The Juneteenth blurb. It's okay. Do you have it? You don't have it there?
I discussed a little bit of the history in Juneteenth at the very beginning, but
got it. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Maybe it's the red drink cocktail that I have here.
Oh, you didn't say to have cocktails.
Waiter.
I guess so. I should have taken Chris's cue and got coffee.
Coffee.
Exactly. We don't really know what's in that cup, do we, Chris?
Hey.
At least I've got full disclosure. Full disclosure. Can you guys see me? Do I need to turn more light on? What do you think? We all right? We're good, yeah? All right, cool. So welcome. What an honor to be sitting here talking with you guys tonight. Joy and Chris and Marcus, to meet virtually. We talked in the beginning of this, plotting and scheming to come up with some real tangible multi-sensory events for next year and onward in Austin and Houston. And So we're just going to dive right in. When I agreed to moderate this, I was like, oh, wonderful. This is great. Juneteenth is important for all Americans. It took place in Texas, and at risk of having a potentially blasphemous analogy, Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but the world celebrates Christmas, right? So looking at it like that, meaning that, yes, Juneteenth is very specific to Texas history. Texas history is very specific to Texas history. It has a very unique, different history than the rest of this country, being part of Mexico at one point and so forth. I heard today something about there's a new book out that is blowing up the whole Alamo myth, but that's another conversation. Yeah. But I'm saying all that to say, I am not from Texas. I'm a Northern Negro who was born in a town that was built on top of a free settlement called Timbuktu of self-emancipated people, which is also something I know that took place in Texas before the announcement on June 18th, I'm told, 1865. Yes, I spoke with Adrienne Lipscomb earlier. She corrected that. Yeah. But I don't want to keep talking. I want to start with questions because you guys are from there. What I hope to do is to, focus on Black culinary and food and drink history, but past, present, future, from your perspectives, professionally, of course, as the acclaimed chefs that you guys are. So proud, at the risk of sounding like an auntie, proud of y'all. For all that you are doing and accomplishing, but also personally, your families. I know in some cases it comes together, the personal and the professional, and just traditions and stuff. I want to hear, and I think that the one good thing about having somebody from outside is that, everybody else from the other 49 states, I won't feel so bad. I can play dumb and ask the dumb questions so that you guys can, through your stories, help us better understand and appreciate this important holiday that is very specific but very symbolic of freedom and our interpretations of it, right? And on the table. Yeah. So Joy, you want to start us off with just talking about your story and.
Sure. My Juneteenth story, I presume.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. So I'm pretty excited to be here. It's amazing to me what's happened with Juneteenth and so rapidly, about it becoming such a national, having a national purview. But I actually was born and raised in Houston. Love the city of Houston. Don't ask me that when I was 18. I have come to appreciate the city of Houston a lot. And my family was primarily from East Texas and Louisiana. Actually, one of my mother's family, my grandmother, her sisters, and everyone generations back was from a little place called Weirgate next to Shankleville in Newton County, which is one of our freedmen colonies, which means it was a place where Black folks right after the war acquired the land, whether they grouped and purchased or somehow acquired and settled. But it is one of about 557 freedmen colonies in the state of Texas, where free Blacks went and tried to have their own economic destiny.
And a story that isn't often told. I learned that about the town that I was from about 2 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Which town is that?
It's called Mount Holly, New Jersey, but it's the town that the free settlement was literally called Timbuktu, spelled differently. But I just found the questions that I'm actually supposed to ask you, which I want to hear that, but then I'm also like, I'll have y'all here for 2 hours. What does Juneteenth mean to you? Did you guys grow up? Is it something that you knew about growing up or didn't know about? Celebrated it?
I would say I did, I think because of our own family's history from East Texas and actually right across the river in Southwest Louisiana, with the other side. We celebrated. We acknowledged Juneteenth in our family and our household there may be food, and this is in my household as a kid growing up, but my family would go to Finnegan Park. Parks were segregated in Houston when my mom and everyone was growing up in Finnegan Park. Yeah, over in the 5th Ward, where my grandparents had a 1-acre farm eventually when they migrated from East Texas and settled in Houston after the war. There was a diaspora of folks of color into the city of Houston, and they founded Frenchtown there in Kashmir Gardens. But that meant that we practiced something, let's call it that, where we acknowledged that something had happened to our family. And whether that was defined or not is another story, but something happened that changed everything, and we acknowledged that. It wasn't until 7th grade Texas history class that you learned that this thing is Juneteenth, and it happened when Granger and the Union soldiers arrived, and there was two sentences in the book. And so our family went to the park. They had a picnic basket and a meal that they brought to the park. There were other Black families in the park, and that was a regular thing that they did in Finnegan Park. And even
was it the same thing every year? Did you guys mix it up, or were there like traditional foods that you would do?
No, there were traditional foods, and they pretty much did the same thing every year. It's the food that you can carry that's safe and works in a park setting. So my grandmother made fried chicken and macaroni and cheese. Sometimes she had her macaroni salad. I don't want to ask about that part, but she had her macaroni salad out there in the park, and pound cake, and sometimes additional sandwiches depending on how long they were gonna end up being out there.
You just named some of the Black classics, I like to call them. And regardless of region,
Yeah, but even when by the time I was in the family, by the time I showed up, there was a barbecue.
Yeah.
And a family barbecue. So yeah, absolutely.
You guys are all from Houston, Chris, Marcus, Joy. Joy, you're in Austin now. How far? I'm trying to get the geography. Okay, but you guys are both, Chris and Marcus, you're both in Houston right now.
Both in Houston and born and raised. Houston.
Born and raised. How many generations?
Straight out of 5th Ward, Texas.
Yeah. Straight out of 5th Ward. How many generations back you go?
2.
2? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
2. My Joy, it's funny because my great grandmother lived in Freedmanstown. I'm sorry, in that's a whole nother story. Lived in Frenchtown.
Yep, Frenchtown. A whole bunch of East Texas and Creole families who mixed and intermarried and established Our Mother of Mercy Church and St. Francis of Assisi down the road, and then also St. Peter Claver, which is up in City Gas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't know why they thought 1 hour was going to be enough time for us to go granular and big picture. Marcus, what does Juneteenth mean to you?
As a native Houstonian, as a Texan, I think Juneteenth means to me the same thing that it does or should mean to the rest of America. It means the ending of a tragedy, a horror story in America's first and greatest sin. It meant the ending of slavery. That's what it means to me. It has its significance beyond that, but first and foremost, it's this idea that liberty, true liberty to the enslaved ancestors had finally come to a realization. The enforcement, I should say, of the legislation that had been put forth by the federal government. That's what it means to me. And
did you know about it your whole life growing up, or was it something you learned recently, or did your family celebrate?
Did I know about it growing up as a kid? Yes, we knew about it growing up as a kid. We knew it was a day. We knew it was something to do. We go as Joyce stated, we would have a gathering somewhere, somehow, some park, some house, barbecue everywhere, and potato salad and all that kind of good stuff. But frankly speaking, knowing it, how do I put, intimately, didn't come until I became an adult. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm jumping guns, but I remember one of the questions says growing up, about Juneteenth, what were some memories, and it's the memories of getting together with your uncles and playing some dominoes and a lot of slapping bones, as we say, a lot of laughter, a lot of cheer, all that kind of good stuff. But I will share one memory that relates to your question, Tonya, which was a memory of shame, being ashamed of in a sort of this holiday, simply because of not knowing what this holiday truly meant. There was this tag on Texas about us being late and being slow, the slow Negroes to be freed last, but
as if it was y'all's fault, right? Okay.
Yeah, as it had something to do with us, when it had only to do with the slave owners who knew the legislation had taken place, but just wanted that extra crop and a half or two. So they wanted to keep our ancestors out in the fields to get those funds. But that feeling of shame that led to a lack of discussion in the household, a lack of truly celebrating the liberty for our ancestors, and I'm so glad to be free from that. So today it means I'm completely free from America seeing that was perpetuated on my ancestors.
I'll raise a glass to that and pour a little libation out for the ancestors on that. I'm so glad you said that, because I think we need to really if time permitting, I want to dissect this concept of freedom and what it means. But before I go too far along, last but certainly not least, Mr. Chris, what does Juneteenth mean to you?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be with this great company.
Thanks for being here, all you guys.
Juneteenth for me is kind of it's complicated, and I don't like using that word, but of course we talk about Granger coming down and enforcing what was announced 2 years before and all that. But to me, what really happened is it took slavery underground. And I'm not really,
right.
And I don't like these new connotations of celebrating.
Right.
I think it needs to be more of a day of observance, of acknowledgement, of recognition of what that meant that day and what's been born since then. Because slavery, it's taken other civilizations hundreds of years to recover from that kind of trauma.
Still,
and we're just a little bit past 100 years of that. As far as my, from the act, we're still, like I said, we're still
right
today, just a little bit more quietly, really not so quiet. It just looks different. But as far as, our experience of engaging in the acknowledgement of the holiday, well, I guess first thing, it's never been a holiday. It's not a holiday.
Right.
What I mean? Like it's our day that we recognize, but at the same time,
holiday now, right? It's becoming,
it's got some traction, but it's
right.
still not official. And you know what I mean? And so my family, they still had to work, and we're 180 years deep in Texas. So it's always been a day of service, and if it did fall on a Saturday or a Sunday, my parents, they took us to church and we go do some service. So in that sense, we continue that approach. But yeah, to me, I just think people really need to know the history before they start doing these other things.
Doing all the American way, I call it, of like new holiday, let's an excuse to whatever.
Merchandise.
Yeah, merchandise or party,
Not what it's about. I really think it should be a day of recognition and then really just acknowledging like where we are today because of that.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm waiting for the word.
And I want to add a word. You said recognition. I also think that a day of reckoning, right? Just thinking about how do we, because truth be told, there's still those that don't believe in the remnants that exist today. as a direct result, not an indirect result, a direct result. So
Don't
Yeah,
believe
I think
in the what? And
the remnants, the residual,
got it.
where we are today being a direct result of
Right.
what happened to us
yeah.
then.
I would go so far to call it almost a day of atonement.
Mm,
Be a day of atonement. That might, that might rankle a little bit. But to the notion that Marcus brought up of shame and, the story of Juneteenth, as I mentioned, was a family story, and the release or emancipation of the family, and those who came before, and that day of atonement was done with some silence. I mean, it wasn't. Yes, people got together, but it wasn't just like 4th of July. And it's nothing like we can
no.
imagine today. That we would do. And I think part of that shame, if I could toss it out there, Marcus, was because it was a day that also reminded us that there's some people that we don't know. Some ancestors we don't know.
Right.
We don't know necessarily where we totally come from in that story. And you had to find people. And actually in Finnegan Park, in the 30s, people would have little notices and say that they would be in the park and who they were related to in an attempt to find other people.
To find those reconnections. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the tender, beautiful, but also very, very heart tugging. Some, parts of it is like the first thing people wanted to do was find each other, find their family. As I mean,
And find themselves.
and themselves, right? And it's because it's not like all of a sudden after that announcement, life was different, right?
Right.
In a flash, people had to, literally get themselves together. Some people stayed, some people left. It's just, it wasn't this thing. And I think that, in the culture that we live in today, it's important to understand the history, to connect these dots. But to your point, we have to take a minute. I think that this is one of those things where, and I'm so happy to hear you guys talking about it like this, where it's like, yeah, before we rush too much to, do the menus, which is important, and I want to talk about that because I want to talk about how you're saying this and what does that mean for as chefs, as restaurateurs, as business people, as this is a thing now. The Juneteenth is on the radar. People are aware. They want to learn about it. We all probably still have a lot more to learn about it as real truth unfolds, right? How do you guys? How are you celebrating it today? Are you not? How are you recognizing it or celebrating it, and how do you think that
So for me, how do I celebrate? So I've celebrated Juneteenth. I will be open 20 years this fall, and I've celebrated Juneteenth every year for 20 years.
with a special menu?
No, every year, every day, every plate.
Got it.
And what I mean by that is, I am, and of course, I observe it on the day, and you in deep reflection and thought. But I truly believe that I am the hopes and dreams of my ancestors, and so getting up, unlocking my door, and turning the lights on, and employing people and serving the community and generating business is that's my way of celebrating their hopes, their dreams, their desires. So I see, yes, we do that on the 19th, but we do it beyond that. For me, that's my way of and just sharing with folks. The biggest way I celebrate it or acknowledge it is to share with folks that I'm here today, unlocking this door as a direct result of those who came before me, whose shoulders I stand on. And I'm here attempting to be the fulfillment of their wildest hopes and the realization of their grandest dreams.
Absolutely. And the first time that I, actually celebrated it through a meal was with the James Beard house when chefs Tonya Holland and I'm blanking on everybody. Don't kill me. The names, I will have those names before the
It's
end of
that cup. It's that
right.
cup.
It's that cup, right? I need to just go get some water. Chris, give me some coffee. Give me that coffee, Chris. Anyway, but yeah, so is that something that you guys do? Is, you know, I totally, I couldn't agree more in terms of what you said, Marcus, in terms of like every day.
Yeah, I think Marcus, for me, Marcus, he clearly elucidated how I feel. I mean, I am the manifestation of generations of people, and just being able to have the Cook's Nook to go out and do what we do in the community, we do with business and entrepreneurship and economics, you know, the policy work that we do in the city and Travis County, and, you know, and nationally, and having even this conversation. Could you imagine my great grandmother, who I knew and grew up with, who was from Shankleville and Weirgate, she would just be beside herself to know that. And I grew up with her. She was with me till I was 12.
And I'm
That's a blessing. Yeah.
I mentioned it was a slip of the tongue, but I knew it was coming. I mentioned Freedmanstown earlier, which is where I grew up, going to church since I was 5 years old, when we had the real red bricks still down on the ground. But you know, when a few years after, you know, the arrival of the federal government in Galveston, Jack Yates and a few other business folks went down and acquired land and started to build community, right? They went out and they did business. We're gonna buy this land and we're gonna build this community. And so, you know, because
what is the distance? Galveston is on the coastal part, little Texas geography, right?
The third coast, baby.
The third coast. How far close from the other major cities from where you guys are? It looks like it's pretty close, not that far from Austin, but Houston, probably hundreds, thousands of miles. I don't know. Texas.
Houston and Galveston are 45 minutes, 45 miles. Take your pick.
Yeah, they've become, it's a metroplex. It's a metroplex these days. And Austin is another 125, 130 miles away. I got it right. So it takes me about 2 hours and 15 minutes. But most people, it takes them close to 2 hours and 45 minutes to get there.
So I just thought of a question that I didn't circle back. Chris, you were saying that your family worked. You grew up. It was just another. You know, it was a day. You know, that you guys did what you normally did, which was work, or if it fell on a Sunday, go to church. What did you ever celebrate it, or did you guys ever do a special meal or anything, or?
Yeah, no. When I say that we went to church, like it was a day of service, so we went to our community, wherever that was. My mother's always been involved in the church or education, so when the day came around, it wasn't like a picnic day. It was, you know, it's the opposite.
Right. But was there a special dinner or anything, or?
No. And you know, like I said, we're 180 years deep in Texas, and it was something that was discussed with the family, and I guess I'm kind of speaking for them, but I imagine this is what the perspective is, and this is what I struggle with as well, is that I had a hard time, especially back then, and I kind of do now, with wanting to celebrate decency winning the day on paper.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I mean, again, it was just on paper. It wasn't in practice. Right,
exactly. To each of your points, like the freedom is still a thing. Like the becoming free is still happening, or trying to happen.
Psychological chains of it and all that kind of stuff. And so, I understand the significance of it.
Right.
And all the different words that we use to how we should address it, but the struggle, I believe, for my family, because they're 180 years of entrepreneurs in Texas, right? And you know, the exception, not the rule. It was, I imagine it weighed on them to be like, okay, listen, let's go have some barbecue and some whatever. Not to downplay the thing, but you know, let's do this.
Yeah.
You know, we got work to do.
Yeah, but that in and of itself, I mean, having a barbecue was something that we would have had to historically have done for the other, not necessarily for ourselves. That's, I always look for the little and the big ways of stepping into freedom, a new day, in terms of being able to even enjoy our food, right? The food that we created.
Or be in a park in a Black space in a public
Right.
setting, right?
Right.
That was huge for them, I think, and my grandparents, the grandparents,
Time.
parents, yeah.
Time together, right? I mean, that's yeah.
And to that point, like, I mean, if you think about it, like I said, we're not that far removed from it. Like, you're not going to get loud with that kind of celebration, especially in the South, because the only people that are happy about it were us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You had power. So it's not the kind of thing that, my grandparents or my great grandparents or even my parents grew up being like, yo, let's go out, because it definitely wasn't this generation. Where we don't care. They don't care.
But it was an internal conversation, and I keep coming back that it was about something about your family, and it was just an acknowledgement, even within the group.
Yeah, very quiet.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Right. And even going to the park in those days in Finnegan, say 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it wasn't about the party. Your family was in the park sharing something, but it was still within their unit.
Right.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have, my grandmother didn't take food to feed the entire park. It was just to be in the space with these other people
who brought their food.
Yeah.
To be in the park and, connect, to acknowledge. Yeah, I mean, historically, I think originally, before the parades and celebrations and red foods and such, it was much more of a spiritual reflection, honoring the ancestors, much more reflective. And I think that now that we know that, and not that now that we know that, but there's so much more to learn. I think that we get to define going forward, how, what it is, because there's no one way, right? But it is so important. I see you getting in cook mode, chef.
Oh, just doing a couple things real quick while we chat. I wanted to make sure that the fish was done on time.
Yes, and I did hear a timer go off. I'm like, right, that was the timer to tell Joy to start the demo. Because I'm sitting here, but like, but what were the dishes? I'm like, let's just make some. Let's just get to the food. We have a demo, right?
Yeah. We could talk about it a little bit, and love for Chris Marcus to give feedback.
I would love that too.
So one of the things I love making, that I love making is stuff that's vegetable forward. And so, because suddenly it's 125,000 degrees.
It's hot there.
I know, it's terrible.
Oh, really? Oh, I forgot to ask y'all what the weather was.
Oh, it's
okay.
I just came back from Mexico. It's not that. And so I decided to do something that was from my grandmother's book out of East Texas, which of course was, always about making their own vegetables. They were basically, farming that land, even though it was in the piney woods. If you know anything about Texas geography, ton of tall trees over there in East Texas. And so they grew.
It ain't easy to farm regular land, so I'm sure that was not easy.
That was not easy. Those trees are pretty amazing. But, things like greens and purple whole peas and okra, lots of onions, rutabaga, one of my favorites. Folks don't eat it. I love rutabaga.
You might have to show us what that is.
I don't know if I have any left. I just had a whole case of them 2 weeks ago. But it's a root vegetable.
Yes.
Kind of rough, not really attractive, sort of, it's related in the turnip family, kind of hard and knobby and white on the outside. You take it off and it's a little yellowish inside, but it's a root vegetable. So I grew up eating rutabagas, and so the first thing we're going to do, and then being on the coast, it's hard to get away from fish. So we're going to do a festival kale slaw, which is a slaw with a ton of vegetables. We're going to make a Texas caviar, which is basically set
Is
of
it actual caviar or is it Texas
I
caviar?
wish it was Texas caviar, which means it's a lot of peas and beans and vegetables put together and very bright and colorful in a dressing. So it's typically served cold. And
There's no fish eggs in this Texas caviar.
yeah, I mean, I guess the black eyed peas can look like fish. There's nothing that looks like fish eggs. I can't even go there. And then we're gonna roast fish. One of my favorites. I'll just show it real quick. Just a side of redfish. That you see that?
Local? Is it a local Texas thing? Texas redfish?
Good old Texas redfish. I love it. I love it. I love it.
What's the you know, consistency?
That's a great question. Redfish cooks well. It's very white. It is flaky.
Like white flaky. Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily light. It is a sturdy fish.
Mm-hmm.
But you put a fork in it when it's cooked, it falls apart in its flakes pretty well. It's not overly fishy tasting,
Mm-hmm.
and adapts, I think, really well to a lot of different dishes. So it's a really red drum, but we all call it redfish, and they have a little spot on their tail. If you ever look for them, they're the fish with a spot literally on the tail fins.
Freshwater fish or
No, goldfish.
no, goldfish from the Gulf. Okay.
Goldfish. I grew up fishing with my grandfather, and we would catch crabby and grouper and redfish. And redfish was the prize. And these guys know the old places where you buy it, we fry it.
Oh yeah.
You go, families would come in from.
We have those in Harlem.
Oh, you do?
And
Folks would
parts of
come in,
Brooklyn.
families who were on the coast in Kemah, Seabrook, when you couldn't really get there. There was not a cool freeway to drop you off at Kemah and Seabrook. And they would come into the city in Houston, and they would bring fish, that day or day before. And there was usually a building where you could just basically buy fish, and then they would cook it right there on the site. So yeah, pretty cool. So all I've done so far is to take 100 fillets, and I sliced it, and just very simply salt, pepper, a little bit of olive oil, and it's gone into the oven. And it's on a fairly fast cook of about 450 degrees. So while that finishes up, what I'm going to do is show you very quickly about the slaw, which is awesome. So the vegetable kale slaw is, wow, it's actually, I don't know if you guys have the recipes yet. You probably don't. We'll get them after all of this.
The attendees, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to send them out to folks. And so it has the kale, it has cabbage. I'll just show you a little here. Your kale.
Curly kale.
Hi, kale, I know. And you basically gotta destem it, chop it, it'll go into a bowl. Rough chop on the kale. I'm not gonna make too much today because I have to eat this right after.
Darn.
I know, it's terrible. A friend, and the same with a little bit of green cabbage. And I'm just gonna toss it in the dish as well.
Marcus and Chris, don't try to hide. I was about to ask y'all, did you guys grow up fishing or not?
Oh, of course. I grew up, my dad who loved to fish. My grandfather really, who was a big time fisherman. He was from Livingston, Texas. You know what you know about Livingston, Texas, Joy?
Yes, about Livingston. Oh my gosh. Near the lake.
Yeah. So my grandfather, who was an outdoorsman, loved to hunt, to fish, and to come back and put it on the stove or put it on the pit. Yeah. And he would kill and cook anything. Literally, he was one of those guys.
You were one of those families. Chances are good. It was small at first. It used to be small game in the old days.
Yeah.
So it was things like dove, squirrel, you name it.
Yep.
You were close enough to have prairie. You could have quail, but often it was small game. Back.
Yeah.
And that's part of the narrative that gets left out of our story during enslavement times is the hunting, fishing, foraging, the gardens that people had. I mean, of course, slavery was different in different places at different points in time. It was not monolithic, but not only working the land, for the greater agricultural good, but also, not surviving off of the mythology of scraps from the table or just the rations that were given out.
No,
And-
and actually in East Texas, there's tons of turkeys, wild turkeys. Folks still go out there and hunt for turkeys.
I'm one of the things I am grateful for is that my grandfather I did get a glimpse of that, right? He was an outdoorsman, and even though he lived in the city, after we moved from Fifth Ward, we moved further down, Cashmere Gardens, and then Northwood Manor. But he lived in Cashmere Gardens. He had a house. And in his backyard, he had on one side he had his chickens and pigs, and then on the other side he had his fruits and vegetables and smack dab in the middle were his big old pecan trees.
Pecan trees.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, pecan trees. Yeah, my grandparents were in Fifth Ward. They were right on Pickfair Street.
Oh man, my brother lives on Pickfair today.
No, you remember there was I know it's gone, but there used to be at the corner of Pickfair. Was it Pickfair? Forget the other street. Crane? No, there was Crane. They had that 1.5 acre farmhouse that was there well into the 70s. That was my grandparents' house.
Wow.
And she had my grandmother, even though they had come from East Texas, and my grandfather from South, right across the Sabine in Louisiana. They had pecans, they had figs, and then she had a garden, and it also had the same, vegetables. They had okra, tomatoes, the stuff that she and her family knew how to grow. So
it sounds like the makings of farm to table before the buzzword, right?
It literally was.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was just living out what he had known growing up in Livingston, Texas. Where my grandparents, my great grandparents lived.
Local and
right.
Regional.
And so he had a smaller plot of land, but he tried to emulate, how he grew up.
How they grew up.
The only thing was missing was the well, because we still had a well. We still drank well water at my great grandmother's house in Livingston. First time I ever seen.
I don't remember well water. I do remember a lot of peaches, pecans, and figs in the yard.
Oh no, I cannot get this out of my head. It was the first time I drank well water. It was the first time I saw a chicken get caught, and he 1 minute he was running around, and next minute he was in my belly.
I know, on the plate.
Where are you in the steps?
I was just about to say. So I took a second and made the actual dressing for the slaw, which is basically a mayonnaise, a little bit of celery seed, a little acknowledgement to I call me familia in Houston. Mm-hmm. Having grown up in Catholic circles, I have a little dab of crema in it, but it has the celery.
Crema. Yep. Is that from the Mexican American culinary culture?
Mm-hmm. A dash of crema, salt, pepper, vinegar, a little bit of onion, and a little salt and pepper, and basically you have. Hope you can see it. It's just going to be the dressing for this slaw, which is effectively the kale, the cabbage, got a little bit of shoestring, carrot for it as well. A little.
That's nice to have a creaminess to the dressing for the texture of like the cruciferous salad that you're making.
Yes, it is. Oh, look cruciferous.
I'll just show it off.
And then I've got a little bit of cilantro because I can. If you can't deal with the cilantro.
Yeah, I'm not with the cilantro. What about I don't know. I'm in that camp of the soap tasters.
So
are you guys working it into all your recipes now? Is that the thing, Texan chefs?
It
tastes always like, been doing that.
It tastes like dirt to me. It doesn't taste like soap. It tastes like loam. Like
why don't you put it in the recipe? Because
it's going to be mixed up with.
Okay, yes, it's a chemistry. It's the chemistry of it all. I'm like, nope, parsley. I'm old school. I just want parsley.
All right, you can toss that part.
Yes.
No problem. And then we're just going to stir that. It'll be crispy, crunchy, cool, creamy, earthy. That kale, cabbage is delicious. And then usually I just set that in the refrigerator while I finish up the last part.
What's the last part?
The last part is the Texas caviar.
Oh, okay. So now, is the fish cooking? Did you already? Is the?
Yes, the fish is actually in the oven. It's about ready to come out.
Because I wanted to ask you about, I do have a copy of the recipe, which everybody will get later. So when you mentioned your Louisiana roots, I see the Creole seasoning. And my question before you said that was going to be, is there a Texas Creole salt, seasoning salt, or is it coming from the Louisiana?
No, this is straight up from the Louisiana side. But what is Texas? What is Texas seasoning salt? That is salt, pepper, stuff, the rub that you put on barbecues. What, salt, pepper, garlic, sometimes.
But I
mean, I've seen people sell it and I go, really?
Yeah. Oh, it's a thing, Texas seasoning salt versus, you think it has a different chili in it or something maybe, or I don't know.
You know full well I was not convinced, so I did not look. Texas, yeah, no, I don't. What's in that?
I see seasonings behind you, Marcus. What's going on back there?
Behind me, oh yeah, these are. And I was just gonna tell Joy, I don't see this on your shelf, Joy. I need to get some of this on your shelf.
Let me see.
It's Texas seasoning salt. No, this is.
You could have stopped me.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. This is our own blend of this is our version of seasoning, all-purpose seasoning that we use on everything. So I'm gonna have to get some on Joy's shelf over there.
No, you see what's happening over here.
I see
all about collection.
I see you.
Stuff from all over the place. Okay, so just real quick, for the Texas caviar, I have some, put this a little spoon, not my fingers. I have a little bit of corn, black beans, and some black-eyed peas all here together. They've been completely washed, rinsed, drained, however you wish to acquire them, so that they're clean and not carrying a whole bunch of sticky liquids or anything of that nature. And then I'm just going to drop this red bell pepper, a little green bell pepper. I could eat onions all day because onions are food of the gods. You can't bite me on onions.
Do you bite into them, Joy?
Yes.
You eat them like an apple?
I have been known to, or especially if they're really good ones or ones that we don't see, a variety we don't see here a lot. I'll do that.
Oh,
a little jalapeno, because jalapeno makes everything better.
But now you got me wondering, because cilantro came on the scene so late for most of the country, but given your proximity to the culinary culture and having Texas having been Mexico once upon a time, was that something that was in an available herb earlier there? Do you guys know?
So you mean earlier than us? You mean like in our family?
No, were you guys using it longer than the rest of the world, the rest of the country, which really didn't start using it until
I grew up eating tortillas and butter off a plancha. I still love it. Tortilla off the plancha with some butter on it and some salt, and walk away and eat it. I'm totally okay with that. Completely okay. I'm just adding the olive oil.
The Black and the Latino food cultures, how's that impacted you guys personally, professionally, in that cooking in where you guys are cooking?
If you guys want to start, I'll finish this and I'll
go ahead, Chris.
Well, I mean,
coffee ain't working. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you thought about that. I mean, I guess the cilantro is a good segue to it, but it really goes back a lot deeper than most people know. So like Mexico, Oaxaca in particular, Oaxacan state was home to the first free African community in all of the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
So our roots are deep there, and you can actually see the West African influence in the Oaxacan cuisine, which is significantly different from any other part of. Yeah, it's significantly different from any other kind of Mexican cuisine that you'll see in Mexico. And it's also, in my opinion, the best. And I thought it was the best before I knew about the history of it. It's just something I was so familiar about it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? Isn't it kind of like a,
Yeah.
I mean, most people don't know that.
Cumin is seasoning of the gods. Totally believe it. But it's such a ranchero flavor and taste that I just absolutely adore. I mean, I grew up, like I said, in Catholic communities. We did, and in union and labor communities, which means we spent a lot of time with our Latino family and friends in Houston. And so eating that food is just and incorporating it, whether it was jalapenos were in everything, whether certain seasonings were in everything, making tortillas at home and enchiladas that had a spin with with vegetables on them to this day. My mother will insist if she's having enchiladas, she still wants onions and bell peppers and lettuce on top. We don't ask.
Wow.
Right? This melding of foods, and so I can't remember a time where I wasn't influenced by the community in Houston.
And you also have to just think about the proximity, right, of Texas to Mexico. So we share a lot of the same ingredients. So it's only natural that, it'll cross into the cuisine, our approach to cooking.
Yeah.
And the seasonality, what's available when,
Right.
and two cultures also that well, arguably one a little longer or first, that have played such a big role in American cookery professionally.
I'll tell you about this last bit here. So the last bit was the Texas caviar. So I basically put those vegetables together. So all the beans, the onions, the peas, the corn. Can I show you that?
Yeah. Oh, that looks like fresh, like fresh shaved corn off of a cob.
Done that too. Absolutely. I love fresh corn.
I'm impressed with you. Mm-hmm.
And you can even roast it a little if you like. Just make sure you have to get all the water off of it.
Okay.
The salt, pepper, bell peppers, jalapeno, a little olive oil, a little apple cider vinegar, the cumin, cilantro, red onions. It's just vegetable forward. And with that and the slaw, and I'll grab fish, and then we'll be ready to plate already. And today we're going to use, in honor of all of you guys, not that it's antique or anything, this is actually one of my grandmothers, one of her plates. These guys probably know that as families sort of change socioeconomic status, the idea of having china or having plates and things of that nature was huge. And so my grandmother and grandfather were the first to sort of get to a point where they could go into a store and they bought a set of dishes that I still have, which is pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome. I'm gonna go back to, I feel like there was some, while you're doing, then cut me off when you want to tell us something, when you're ready to show us the plate. What are some of the myths, you guys, anybody who wants to answer this, that you heard regarding Juneteenth that you want to, if you had an opportunity to make it clear to everyone or to our audience to address?
Well, I guess the one thing is that, like, Texas wasn't the last state. The actual holdouts were Kentucky, and the state that our president's from is Delaware. Those were the last two states to succeed. And I think that was like in December of that year.
Yeah.
So they held strong for a minute. So there's that, and then also that really, from what I was reading, preparation, knowing that it's going to be a big year for Juneteenth. Really, this goes back to Ohio. They one of the first ones to be, what's his name, Granger. Yeah, or the Union rather, liberated, and they were celebrating right after the announcement of the Emancipation Proclamation. So it's a lot of things, but hey, we're from Texas.
I claim everything, right?
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad. I'm glad that it's being claimed and it's being owned, and hopefully we just get the right information that goes along with it. Yeah. That's really the most important. And who cares who was first, who was last? But let's just wait up and know what's going on. Oh, that looks beautiful, chef.
I haven't even finished. I just wanted to show you this part. So we just got the kale bed and got the fish on top. And then the last bit is this caviar, which I'll drop on there. It's clean, it's summer, it's Texas.
And that kale looks delicious.
Oh, thank you, sir. Oops. And I think we are just about there.
Yum. Oh, wow. That is beautiful.
Yeah,
That
buddy.
is beautiful.
There's nothing
So,
there. It's all vegetables with a wonderful piece of Texas redfish. Straight
My mind's playing tricks on me. I feel like I'm getting a little beautiful aromatics.
This is cilantro.
coming through.
This is cilantro.
That's good.
It must have
That's
done
the
some
cilantro you
alchemy
smell.
with something to make me like it, because
But I mean, everything that I pulled out though, outside of the fish, is stuff that people typically have around in their kitchens. It's just a bunch of seasonings. It's some crunchy, cabbage, slaw, kale. You could even use canned corn, black eyed peas, black beans, bell peppers, onions, and just a lot of seasoning. And the roast was all of 12, 15 minutes of that fish with the seasoning on it. So anybody can make that.
And is this something that you would say is like, a great thing to make for Juneteenth in particular, or it's just something
Well, this dish always says to me coastal Texas.
Yes.
And coastal East Texas, that Southeast Texas, that curve, and it's about fish and about a whole bunch of vegetables and folks who farmed and worked the land and just passing that down. And so my grandmother, she was the queen of vegetables, and she baked. And so these were, grew up hulling peas for her.
Man, come on, these peas.
Where are they?
No, I was mocking my grandmother, telling us to come help haul those peas.
Yeah, come help haul peas, and then you're there by yourself.
What are you guys' thoughts
This
about?
also
Oh, go ahead.
summer.
Huh?
I was just saying that this also screams summer.
It screams summer.
Yeah.
Is that, you might have said it, but is that particular fish a seasonal fish for this time of the year, or is it,
typically we catch redfish year round.
Yeah, okay. But the other ingredients and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
That is summer. Yeah, that's right. Juneteenth is technically the eve of summer's eve.
Summer. Yeah.
Right.
You could even have a bit of okra in it, which she did. Succotash was on the stove all the time.
I love succotash.
Some combination of tomatoes, corn, okra, some peas, tons of different, onions and stuff, and it was always simmering. So yeah, this dish just reminds me of, summer South Texas.
It's so crazy. I mean, not the exact same stuff, but a lot of similar stuff in the Garden State we ate, up north.
Yeah,
that's always fascinating to me too, is connecting the dots to Black food. You
do know what I'm about. You know what I'm about to do, right?
What you about to do? Put some hot sauce on it?
We put some
Is there a Texas hot sauce? Or I know I sound like a crazy New York City, but I figured I could ask all the dumb questions from people who are not there. What's y'all's take on hot sauce? What is it?
Love it.
But like tangier, hotter? Is there a particular pepper, or it's just, it doesn't matter?
If I open my refrigerator door, on the door where all the condiments live, there's one shelf that is just bottles, right, of different hot sauces, whether it's habanero based or Scotch bonnet based or you name it.
Same.
Yeah.
Yep.
Some smoked ones, and because I happen to be spend a lot of time in entrepreneur land, I get to test a whole bunch of entrepreneurs' versions and their family versions. So a lot of that, and salsas all sit on a shelf. Can always pull out a condiment.
So guys, we are coming into home stretch. I have at least one more question from the questions that I want to ask my version of it, but I also want you guys to tell me if there's anything I haven't asked that you want to touch on. There was something you said, Chris. Was it the last episode of High on the Hog? just talking about like ownership and the culture, and this connects to this question about the industry, the food and drink industry at large. And you know, if the industry is going to be fully recognizing Juneteenth, what, to each of you guys, or whoever wants to answer, what would that look like to you, or what would you like for that to look like
in the industry?
The restaurant industry at large, food and drink industry.
I think Marcus hit it earlier. I'm sorry, Marcus, go ahead and hop on.
No. Go ahead, Chris.
Please, Marcus.
No, well, I'm one of these preparers, right? So I went through the questions, and I was waiting for that question, which was, what do you think the industry
can learn from this?
Learn from this?
Yes. Okay.
And my response is, the industry can learn what the industry wants to learn from this, but only what the industry is interested in learning from this. The information is there.
Right.
The secret is out of the bag. This industry, just like the rest of the world, the rest of the nation, just has to come to grips with how much of the truth it wants to deal with. And the same delay that we know that the legend of Juneteenth has, 2 years later you get free. You imagine that in the world of the culinary world, the world of business in general, that delay has amplified and extended over time. So out the gate, we're 2 years behind in access to capital, in access to a network and net worth, and the learning curve of doing business. I was elated a couple of years ago when I found out that my ancestors' culinary style had been rediscovered by people who didn't look like me, right? And so I think the industry can learn that the foundation of this industry is, my ancestors. We go back to the story of Hercules, the story of Hemings and beyond, the story of the Porter Pullmans, the story of the bartenders and waiters,
caterers and
who fed their families on
cream makers.
What'd you say?
I'm just adding to your list. I'm like, caterers, ice cream makers,
the caterers. And so I think the industry can learn what it wants to learn. And the real question is, what does it want to do? We got to think about this. We're just within the last 5 or 6 years that Eduardo won the award from James Beard Association for the first time, a person that looks like you and I. I think the industry has a lot to learn, and it has a lot to do with regard to this issue of the ramifications and the residual of the oppression that existed. I don't know if that's what you were leading to, Chris, but that's what was on my mind and my heart.
No, I mean, I'm glad that you took the lead on it, because it just got me thinking a different way. And like the past 12 years, I'm always happy to follow you. But what I think, just to piggyback on what you were saying, I think as far as the change in the industry is really going to be determined by this movement that we see right now. We see this awakening with Black people supporting Black business and Black restaurants, right? And so like the industry is going to take notice of it. I mean, there's already been appropriation of our cuisine and claiming it, and as you alluded to, with people that don't look like us, that aren't us, they're claiming these ancient techniques and flavors, and now it's called Southern cuisine, and they're putting it all over the place, and now they're the ambassadors of food from Benin, which is insane. I think the more that we start to spend our own dollars in our own places and make our voice louder, we'll be able to pump up our own creators, which is everybody who's on this call right now, which will allow us to do more freedom to work outside of the limited framing that's already created for what we're doing. Because I mean, please don't get it twisted. Like there's just like the list of people that you mentioned, from Hercules to everybody that followed. Soul food is like that's cuisine of survival based with scraps, right? And that's just the ingenuity that we created jazz out of nothing. You know what I mean? Just using little leftover things. But that, I mean, that's all we can play. Like we've done food all over the world, every kind of food, and we're masters of it. But there's no light that's given to all this other kind of, all these masters that do everything from Lebanese to Armenian to French to Oaxacan food. We do it all, and we need to have the freedom to do that. And I think us awakening to and supporting each other will give us what we're looking for, because nobody else is going to give it to us. Like, so emancipation came, that doesn't mean that we were free. It just means that slavery goes underground. People are recognizing Black food. It doesn't mean anything, because as long as the framework's so limited, then the only thing they're going to support is just the 3 top categories, when there's so much more that we do.
Is there an opportunity to take something like this and like something like a holiday that is arguably uniquely, I mean, the term Juneteenth, that's Ebonics right there, right? To claim it and I don't want to say, because we know what's going to happen, right? But even in spite of what's going to happen, big picture, you know, is there a way that we can claim that and use things like Juneteenth to communicate some of the work that you're doing, Joy? Let me let you talk, because you have to answer that question too.
I would say, for me, the thing that I would want folks to know and take away is exactly what Marcus and Chris has said, to take that one step further. You know, I'm a fan of the long game, and the long game is to create intergenerational wealth and help other entrepreneurs of color create generational wealth that restores some of the economic security that families had tried to create for themselves, even in the freedom colonies. Right.
Yep.
And that autonomy,
Pride.
Autonomy and independence that comes from being able to create and show others how to create wealth and how to create that security and ensure long-term families' viability and survivability.
To benefit from the wealth that we have generated for the country. That's
and if I could put that in perspective a little bit, and I'm grateful for Dr. Harris and Netflix and Chris and all the people who put the work in for that project for High on the Hog to be a freaking knockdown, drag out, spectacular piece of work. I mean, to be as sexy as all outdoors, I'm super grateful for it. But I you know, going back to generational wealth and what the industry can learn today, there's also a series out called The Food That Built America, right? And I promise you, I've watched every episode 5 times. Nobody looks like me.
Right. I tuned into that with the expectation that I would see.
The reason I'm bringing that up is because the generational wealth that was passed down through all of these companies that was started the same time that Mr. French's started French's Chicken down here, and now they are billion-dollar corporations. The same time that, you know, Chris's grandmother did the work that she did, and these billion-dollar corporations are still making billions of dollars. You know, we were good enough to be the face of the product. I'll end there. We were good enough to be the face of the product. Yeah. And removing the face isn't sufficient. Replenishing the lost revenue is where it's at. That's where the industry can learn.
That's what, for me, I'm with you. That's exactly what the industry can learn, and that there are folks who are going to claim their spot in that, and their family spot, and their food spot, period, end of discussion.
Cool.
But you guys want me to start asking you some questions that I see here? I am looking at some questions from our audience. I guess I'll just start from the top here. Some questions and comments. Erica Bongart would like to know, is there one aspect of Juneteenth that is not fully understood? How would you rewrite the Juneteenth story?
I mean, I think Chris explained it, but if I had to write the story, if you want me to rewrite the story, I'm gonna rewrite the whole history where my ancestors weren't taken away in chains and put in slavery. Well, we don't need June the 19th.
Yeah.
That's if I'm writing the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that it's just, I mean, it was paper freedom. There's nothing but trauma and terror inflicted on us, you know, since that day. I just drove
immediately after
with Reconstruction. I mean, and so I just drove from Houston up here to Canada. And I mean, I swear.
You're in Canada right now?
Yeah, I'm quarantining in Canada. It's a lot of fun.
Wow.
But so I drove up there, and this country's so beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And I've been on, you know, I mean, we've all, I think everybody on this call has been around the world several times, but this country's absolutely beautiful. But what's unfortunate is I'm driving up, with every breath that I take in the beauty, I exhale, you know, trauma.
Right.
That beauty's never been ours. You know what I mean? It's never been ours. It's always been something for us to hide and run from, run through, all that.
Even when we tried to do it in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, Brad, Brad, like, I mean, as recently as the 70s, we had some terror brought us out here in Nova Scotia, which is, you know, that's a whole nother thing. So, I mean, it's not like that's the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a new kind of trauma that was brought on us that we're still dealing with right now. So I think people need to wake up to that, and really, when you're talking about our culture and when you're looking at where we're at, you need to know exactly why we're here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Anything.
I think that's clear that Juneteenth wasn't an end. It was just a transition and change to something else.
Yeah.
I just rediscovered this quote, a King quote, that I posted a while ago and forgot. Emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, unless it was otherwise, right? And therefore, it was freedom and famine at the same time. And, you know, Martin Luther King, May 8th, 1967. Yeah. And I don't say that to be a downer. I know none of us are trying to be a downer, but I think we all have to realize the complexity of our history and acknowledge that. And I think if I had to answer that question, I would say I would like the shift to be on what happened the next day, what happened after, to focus on us, the people, our ancestors, their stories. Take the focus off of the white soldiers with the announcement, you know, on whichever day it was, and shift it to what that meant.
Yeah, Black.
You know, and how without any grants or land, you know, with nothing given to them.
Part of my rewriting is us getting on that ship and taking it.
Right.
Sorry,
right. And how that connects to
pulling
now,
a whole Nat Turner.
How that connects to now. How much time do we have, guys? All right, I think we're doing good. We're doing good. But all right. Oh, I don't know. I don't see a lot of questions, Debbie. Debbie, do you want to? Okay, here's a good one. Any favorite recipes? What do you guys have? Joy took us through one of her delicious favorite seasonal recipes that speaks to the region of where you guys are. Any favorite recipes to make for Juneteenth is the question from Alondra.
Well, I mean, the one that just sticks out to me is one that's been on the restaurant's menu since we opened. Just because it has that one component that we all associate with Juneteenth, which is red, which is in honor of the blood that was shed to get that proclamation made. So it's just our watermelon salad. And so it's watermelon, fresh cut watermelon with baby arugula, iced red onion, and a strawberry jalapeno vinaigrette, topped off with feta cheese and a little bit of pistachio. It's a great, and that one screams summer too.
Yep.
Because all the things, right? Yeah. All the seasons. I'm glad I didn't ask it. I don't see it. I didn't want to say it, but we cannot have this conversation without the words red and foods together discussed. Red food and the
watermelon.
And the right. And the watermelon, right. Because I mean, the watermelon is a whole nother.
It's a whole nother.
A whole
nother conversation.
I'm thinking of a T-shirt right now. I am smart. I am intelligent. I am brilliant. And on the back, but I will eat the hell out of a piece of watermelon.
In public, face, you know.
Look, I'm going back to that
salt,
shame,
with
man.
salt.
I remember when that weight was put on me about, as a kid, kid, eat the watermelon. And I was like, man, look here. If it's good to me, I'm gonna get down with it. There's a video that everybody should watch.
Like
by Petey Green. It's called How to Eat a Watermelon.
Oh yes.
It's true.
T-shirt.
It's true. I think we need to make that. Somebody needs to make that T-shirt.
Yeah, you see that? That's the heart.
I agree, because I too have a. It's funny, Chris, that you mentioned your watermelon salad. I have one too. And watermelon and feta never goes out of style.
Oh man, I love it.
It's delicious.
I mean, one of the things.
There's no exaggeration. We had watermelon in my office today. No, I mean, literally, it's sitting it's sitting 10 feet from me.
I'm eating the watermelon off my drink garnish because we're talking about watermelon, okay? But a gift from God, from Africa, right? All the melons originates from Africa.
Yeah.
It is simultaneously hydration and nutrition at the same time.
And
cultivated here.
And some fiber.
Oh, and fiber.
Some fiber.
Probably electrolytes. Probably, yep.
And if you put salt on it, it has salt.
Hey.
Oh, wait. Okay. I guess that's an add-on.
You can make pickles out the rinds.
Yeah.
But
man, you know what? The first time I had that, I was in heaven. As a pickle lover, I don't want to get off on that.
I read something that Michael Twitty shared a while ago about one of the first documented meals in the Galveston Daily News, reported on different celebrations across the state 20 years later in 1883. And it's reported that in San Antonio, 23 wagons loaded with watermelons were destroyed, as in consumed, with marvelous rapidity. And so, watermelon being, eaten early is, But the thing where I'm going with this is, as we all know, is the shame that later became associated with it, which is just tragic, right?
When it was something that in Texas was grown and cultivated, we still have one of the big centers for watermelon in the United States, in Hempstead, north of Hempstead. It was also economic power, actually, for some.
Economic power. Thank you. I think that's everything why it was taken from us through propaganda. To your point, Marcus, it's like, oh no, we have to. Every ethnic group has been shamed in some way through their foods, but we somehow took it to another level with watermelon and the delicacy of fried chicken.
I'm not even ashamed. I'm making some fried chicken tomorrow, and it's going to be awesome. And also an oven version that'll be crispy. I have no shame, because just like watermelon, I have no problems with fried chicken.
And I am currently working on a fried chicken air freshener.
Fried chicken aromatherapy. Fried chicken candle.
My grandmother's shotgun home on Kentucky Street in 5th Ward. I mean, it smelled of fried chicken every day, all day.
But can
you imagine that? You just walk in and everywhere it's just like,
it's just
no, because if that happened, I'm gonna want to eat the fried chicken, and if there's no actual 3D chicken, I'm gonna just be mad. So,
that was that chicken. Oh, you saying if the
I'm talking about your air freshener. I'm like, no, unless there's a chicken to follow that beautiful aromatic fruit, then no.
Oh, no. Can you imagine a spray container of Febreze that's fried chicken?
All right, we have another question. Can any of you talk about the beverages, the beverages and drinks of Juneteenth?
I think you just talked about it. Red.
Strawberry juice, watermelon juice, hibiscus from Africa.
Hibiscus and sorrel turned into a beverage, and tea here with, maybe ginger, a little bit of sugar, always delicious. But I learned that from other families. That was not a tradition in our family. I learned that from other people.
There's a lot of debate about the origin, the red, it doesn't seem to be like day one, red foods were on the scene, but it makes sense. Red being the color of celebration, really around the world. I mean, look at the Chinese culture and the color red, and and these things that are part of intricately woven into our culture, right? The watermelon from Africa, hibiscus from Africa, strawberries are not from Africa. Not that they don't grow there, but that's another economic freedom engine, right? Black families that grew strawberries and made preserves, and yeah,
Absolutely.
and the season, it's just kind of cosmic, right? That it happened on 19th, and all these things, that's like peak season, and red is a celebratory. I see how it happened. It makes sense. I'm gonna embrace that. I'm gonna run with
working
that.
it out. You bringing it on home.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, okay, Marcus, since you are the question expert, what did I not ask that you wanted me to ask?
Yeah, honestly, I think that was it. I think we covered everything.
Except pound cake.
Okay, take it away.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Just pound cake, the deliciousness and
You're like, I just want to say pound cake.
I just wanted to say pound cake and the
Just wanted to say
deliciousness
pound
and
cake.
beauty and versatility and travel worthiness of the pound cake.
Man, with some good old fried chicken.
Well, that's another thing that shows up in a lot of the early, the few documented menus. One of the things I love about Edna Lewis, Virginia, I know, whole different time frame, is that she's got a beautifully laid out Emancipation Day menu.
Yeah.
Which is very seasonal. It takes place in the fall for them. But to the point earlier about shifting the focus off of the the white soldiers with the news and onto us, and connecting the dots and freedom, and what that looks like, and just recognizing that yes, that that happened on that day, but like we were saying earlier, people emancipated themselves through leaving, or through other means, negotiation in the case of James Hemings. And that there are, because it's so complicated, there are various different, what do they call them, Jubilee days, Emancipation days, all over the country, all throughout the Americas, right? Different dates and times, different years. I think that, that's another piece of history we hadn't really thought about. It didn't all happen at once, and this is a great example of how ridiculous, how trifling 2 years, finding out 2 years later. But it also reminds us that people learned at different times than what Chris said. There's places that were later than that. I'm rambling. Marcus, did you give me another question, or you said I asked them all?
No, we covered them all.
All right, so let's see. Comments. Oh, thank you, Melandra. She can't wait to come visit the restaurants. Me too. Let's go together. Trishette Roy, let's see. Oh, let's see. Thank you. This is a beautiful comment about the forum being great and wanting to organize more conversations like this, and to connect the dots to supporting our family in the food industry. Props to acknowledging Afro-Mexicans in Veracruz and in the other coast.
Love some Veracruz.
Any other questions, guys? What time is it? We got 4 minutes according to the clock.
I think the only thing left is the benediction. And talk about how people can come and celebrate with us, find us where they can find us. All that
That's
good
a great
stuff.
way. Perfectly, yes. Talk about what
all of us ain't on Netflix, so we got to get it out there.
True that. All right, kick it off, Marcus. What you got going on?
Oh no, that was I just grits. That's what I got going on. Down in Houston, Texas, the corner of Alabama and Travis. We're getting ready to celebrate this fall.
Yes, grits. Yes.
Yes.
I was laughing because I thought you were just saying grits, but I'm like, that's yes.
Yeah, grits. Getting ready to celebrate our 2 decades doing this. This fall we will. So yeah.
That's amazing.
We started out in 2001 on the corner of Alabama and Travis as one small shop. And then we have since grown to, from the Breakfast Club to the Reggae Hut, which was a source of inspiration for me as it opened in my senior year at Texas Southern. And we later acquired it 5 years after opening TBK. Then you talk about the Allicat Bar and Lounge, which is another concept we have, and Kulture, which is coming back this summer. Concept that was opened specifically to highlight our food, our art, and our music. Well, all three of our art forms, our cultural contributions to the shores through food, music, and art. So we got something special coming up then. But you can find us right there, Catfish and Grits.
We're gonna have a slide up with how to follow you and to find out. But yes. All right, continuing the shameless plug part of this program. Who's up next? What's going on? What you want folks to know about? Look out for.
And Joy, I got to connect you with my daughter.
Oh, what's she doing?
Just moved to Austin.
Oh, did she? Yeah, please do. And give her give you my cell phone number. You can always call. That'd be great. So I'll just go. In Austin, the Cook's Nook is a culinary incubator. So our focus is on business and economics and making through that after, how do we combine food and technology to create sustainable businesses? And so we're continuing to work with our entrepreneurs and help them try to establish businesses. Some of our entrepreneurs are doing consumer packaged goods and they're on national shelves. And then we've got entrepreneurs who are doing catering and meal kits, meal services, beverages, wellness, and working with those guys, working with the corporates on corporate needs, which is, people will come to our site and do our space and do film styling for commercials, to actually working with corporations, consulting on innovation and products. And then the last big space that most people sort of know about, but was the last to develop, was our food services group. We have the first local food services group here in Central Texas. And we do about 3,000 meals a day that go out across Travis County to vulnerable populations and those who have been affected by COVID. But now we're swinging into what does that look like on an upswing and a change in recovery? And what does that look like? And how do we still serve? In Travis County, 24% of all children are food insecure. That number looks like 18% of all adults. And so how can we be what's about to be the 10th largest city in the United States, have that kind of nutritional deficit? And then how do we bring meals to the table, whether through programs or with nonprofits and others, but also retail. So we're going to be on the retail shelves with our meals and menus and food, and providing those in neighborhoods and areas where there might be food deserts or have extreme food insecurity and food access challenges. And so we'll still be doing that this year and expanding on that as we go retail across the region here. And then lastly, still just working with policy, working with on a food policy board. I have to change the mechanism itself and who is at the table, or create new tables and say, this is how this is going to work and how it should work in food and how people should have access to it. And so food policy board and working with city leaders and even USDA leaders to talk about what should be happening in food and ownership and getting folks the capital, the money, the access to be at the tables to change that. So still doing that stuff.
Here and hallelujah on that. Wow. Yeah, we got to talk. Some dots to connect.
Yeah. Well, controlling food, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business, or you're someone who is, receiving food through a program, the idea that you can control your food access changes your family's lives.
And we have a unique collective history and relationship with that in this country. Chris, shameless plug time.
So Lucille is about to celebrate its 9th anniversary in August. We're about to open up a new restaurant late August and December, which we're really excited about, in the old Sears building, which has a very interesting story. in Canada, where I was supposed to be opening up the new restaurant here in Canada, which is a celebration of Nova Scotian ingredients with Lebanese influences, but the borders out here are completely shut unless people are willing to quarantine 14 days. So that's not happening for most.
Sorry.
But we'll do it next year. It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And then it's great to hear about Joy's efforts with food security, because that's exactly what we're doing with 1913. To date, we've donated over 285,000 meals to those that are food insecure. And what we've been trying to do is we've created a sustainable, deep impact initiative to where it's not just like here one day and there another day. We service these communities every day of the week, 5 days a week. So they know they can trust us to be there. And so then it's turned from just giving fish to teaching people how to fish. So we're hiring directly from these communities, creating a vertically integrated ecosystem to where in our village, there's no waste because we have 52 acres of land where we grow our own food. We're hiring people to, like Joy was saying, to become masters of their own food security, because there is no room for growth until you can secure your food sources. The way that we combat the waste is that we have a fermentation lab, to where if we can't use whole ingredients in actual meal production, then we send it to the fermentation lab and we go back to cooking 101, which is pickles, ferments, and preserves and all that good stuff, and the hot sauces. The things that can't be used over there then go into compost, and that goes back to the lands. So there's no waste in anything that we do, and everybody that's a part of the program has zero experience for the most part, and their entry level payment is, excuse me, $12 an hour. So the real ethos of this program is to bring dignity to ownership and to trade, because before desegregation, we had that. We were completely self-sustained. Nobody wants to get into the kitchen work because it's you don't make a lot of money and it's nasty. But I think the reason why we're having such success with getting these people to buy into the program is because they can see the immediate benefit of the work that they're doing. They're getting paid to bring dignity and comfort to their own communities, to their own neighbors. So we're just going to continue to grow this over the next year. And if anybody wants to help us out, please go to the website, lucilles1913.org.
Wow.
Or you can just go to
I love that he got the call to action right in there. I was going to say, Cooks Nook Austin, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I love the echoes.
Or you can just go to the or you can just go to the restaurant. Chili biscuits, whatever you want to get a cocktail, and just know that you'll have the benefit of dual dollars.
And do what? The dollars? What?
You get the benefit of dual purpose dollars, and that every dollar you spend with us will, go right back into that initiative. Because until November of 2020, we were completely self-funded through Lucille's.
Yeah.
I love the echoes of the past of what our people, what the ancestors have always done, right? Just being very efficient in using everything, not wasting, and making it amazing and delicious, and which is a contrast, to a lot of the waste that happens in the industry.
And not just through food, but through human beings as well.
Yes.
Human beings as society wants to cast to the side. Established a way of finding self-worth and value. So I applaud you, brother, for what you're doing, man. And you as
all
well,
of you
Joe.
guys. It's like you can't, you're not just chefs and entrepreneurs and human beings with lives and families and responsibilities, but just recognizing that it's so much bigger than you, bigger than us, and that there's still work to do, right? Because everybody ain't quite as free as is possible. So I think we're wrapping up here. My quick shameless plug for the James Hemings org is this Sunday. We're celebrating a documentary film with the Roxbury Film Festival, a screening of the story that Marcus should have been told, that we should have known about America's first classically trained chef de cuisine and enslaved Black man. So look out for that, James Hemings org. And the food griot, I'll be talking with Dr. Jessica Harris this Saturday on Juneteenth. We'll be talking at Weeksville virtually. So join us for that conversation at 3:00. And thank you, James Beard Foundation. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Chris. You guys, this was great. I look forward to being in person next time and tasting all the things.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Fantastic to see you all as always. As always.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much to everyone for joining us for this panel, for the openness of your discussion, and for talking about food at the very end, because now I am very, very hungry. So thank you so much. A warm thank you to Chris and Marcus. Joy, thank you so much for providing your recipe and your demo. And Tonya, thank you so much for moderating tonight. And of course, thanks to our audience who came out and joined us. If you enjoyed tonight's conversation, please go to jamesbeard.org and check out other upcoming virtual events. To donate to our ongoing fund for Black and Indigenous American business owners, please visit jamesbeard.org/investmentfund-fund. Thank you everyone so much. I hope you have a great night and I hope you have a great Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.